The welcome speech by Ms. Ho. Now let's welcome Mr. Siddharth Chatterjee, United Nations Resident Coordinator in China, and he's going to kick off our first keynote section. 那接下来我们有请联合国驻华协调员常启德先生为我们做主题致辞，有请。
Your Excellency, Madam Carrie Lam, Your Excellency, Mr. Liu Gonghyun, and our host, Madam Huang Zhouwei. Excellencies, distinguished guests, colleagues from the United Nations family, dear friends. First of all, I wish to express my gratitude to the Hong Kong Federation of Women and the Golden Bohemia Women Entrepreneur Organization for co-organizing this critical forum to promote the empowerment of women. I am proud to serve the leadership of the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, who's a feminist and who has been at the forefront of ensuring gender parity within the United Nations system. I'm delighted to join this event on gender equality and women's empowerment and rights of women and girls. Today is especially topical as we have just marked the International Day of the Girl Child on the 11th of October and the International Day of Rural Women on the 15th of October. And yet, as the UN Secretary General reminds us that the strength, health, and empowerment of the world's girls is a matter for every single day of the year. We have long called for the centrality of women to the shaping of our world. Women and girls represent half the world's population. Thus, they represent half of the world's potential. We also know how critical women and girls are to achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the transition to the more just and sustainable world envisioned by the 2030 agenda of the SDG. SDG 5, the goal for gender equality, is frankly an anchor for the success of the rest of the sustainable development. As the UN Resident Coordinator in China, I can testify to the centrality of gender equality and women's empowerment to delivering on the framework agreement of the United Nations has with China, the UN SDG framework, across all the three priorities of the framework, which is from 2021 to 2025, which is focused on people and prosperity, the planet, and partnership. Ladies and gentlemen, gender equality is not only a cross-cutting priority across the framework, but also particularly expressed in the areas of entrepreneurship, equal economic opportunities, non-discrimination in workplaces, access to skills development and decent jobs, as well as protection from gender-based violence, improved access to reproductive health services, and promoting women's participation in climate actions, biodiversity conservation. All of these are seamlessly aligned to the government of China's 14th five-year plan. If there is one lesson to be learned from the COVID-19 pandemic, that it is not the gender equalizer that was initially thought. We used to say that the virus makes no distinction and that we are all likely to be affected, men and women, rich and poor. We now know that that is not so. Women and girls have had to bear a disproportionate share of the brunt and the ferocity of this virus. As professionals, women play a disproportionate role in responding to the virus as frontline responders, health professionals, community volunteers, as well as caregivers. Most caregivers at homes and in our communities are women. Overall, the pandemic has impacted the labor market by gender. For example, women's employment share in higher contact-intensive sectors has been more severely affected. Also, women are more often employed in temporary and part-time jobs that are often at risk of being terminated during these downturns. Moreover, the limited progress made on child marriage, female genital mutilation, maternal mortality, and girls' education over the past decades have seriously hindered due to the pandemic. And we've seen all forms of violence against women and girls tend to have increased in these times. And that's across the world. COVID-19 not being of any exception. Hence, COVID-19 is not just a health issue, it is a social and an economic issue, which prices will be overwhelmingly paid by the world's women and girls. And because COVID-19 and its adverse impact on gender equality, this type of global networking to support and empower women and to catalyze their potential is now more important than ever. And therefore, I commend this forum, bottom of my heart. For the past 10 years, the world has rapidly digitalized and internet connectivity has become an indispensable part of our daily life. Even more so, the pandemic has accelerated the use of digital platforms for learning, earning, and connecting. Unfortunately, though, as the UN Secretary General has pointed out, the gender gap is digitally real. For example, in the global internet usage gap is growing from 11% in 2013 to 17% in 2019. And in the least developed countries, the gap is 43%. 2.2 billion people under the age of 25 do not have internet access at home. Girls more often than boys. And this brings the challenges for girls to fully utilize the digital learning and earning and connecting plan. Same seems to be the reality with women in science, technology, engineering, and maths. Women contribute to sustainable development through their participation in these fields of the STEM, which still tends to be dominated by men. Globally, less than 15% of graduates in STEM are women. Women have largely achieved gender parity at university. But as women embark upon a scientific career, the gender gap widens. Only in three researchers is a woman. There is concern as limited representation of women in the development of frontier technologies means also that women are not present when norms, including those related to gender, are being negotiated. Overall, there is a need for a shift in the labor sector, particularly in the midst of new economic transformations taking place. However, the shift from work in the informal sectors and unpaid care work, largely done by women, to formal sectors requires stronger social protection. If these challenges are there, many opportunities also exist. For example, China's 14th Five-Year Plan, the UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework recognizes gender equality as a priority. China's new 10-year program on women's development 2021 to 2030 also prioritizes gender equality, and it's fundamentally to its own country's development plan. This plan specifically includes social protection extension, including paid leave and childcare, as well as women's skills development, supporting the necessary shift in the labor sector, and providing existing opportunities to enhance the country's focus on green development and willingness to improve the quality of life. Ladies and gentlemen, the United Nations family in China stands ready to support China in moving forward with the implementation and the commitments and the priorities of the country's development plan. Moreover, as China is the world's leader in digital technology innovations and the largest number of people with access to internet, the efforts to expand internet access to under-resourced regions is consistent. This will benefit all. However, it is critical to acknowledge the fact that gender gaps to ensure inclusive development and care for vulnerable populations. The UN in China stands ready to encourage and leverage public-private partnerships, engage diverse stakeholders to come together to identify, seize innovative opportunities through international South-South cooperation, including and particularly on gender equality and women's empowerment. I would conclude by saying that as gender equality is not to stand alone as an SDG, it is embedded in all the SDGs. That sustainable development goals will not be achieved without gender equality. And this means prioritizing girls' rights and unleashing the women's full potential. Thus, this kind of networking, again, provides a cooperative platform and the critical steps that are needed in the right direction. At the high-level meeting of the 25th anniversary of the 4th World Congress on Women, President Xi Jinping in October 20 issued a clarion call to action. He said, the international community needs to strive for genuine gender equality. Protection of women's rights and interests must become a commitment at the national level. As the world pursues a post-COVID recovery, new opportunities may be created for women to participate in decision-making and be involved in national, economic, cultural, and social governance. Prejudice, discrimination, and violence against women should be eliminated so as to make gender equality a social norm and a moral imperative observed by all, unquote. I wish to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to me and for this invitation to this important forum to speak about female empowerment, women's and girls' rights. I'm particularly happy to discuss these matters as a male, and I would encourage more men to engage in this discussion, as women's and girls' rights and their empowerment is not just a woman's issue, it is everybody's business.
Thank you. A big round of applause to Mr. Siddharth Chatterjee. Well, it's actually a live speech all the way from Beijing office. A big round of applause once again to Mr. Chatterjee. Thank you.